Hi everyone, and welcome to another out and about video. And this is a story which is quite bizarre in nature, one could say. And we're here at Calf Hey Reservoir, in between Helmshore, Haslingden if you will, on the way towards Blackburn. And the reservoir, as you can see, is just at the side of me, and that's Calf Hey Reservoir, as I've just said. But we're here primarily to talk about the story of a young 17-year-old man called Ernest Rodwell. And this story is another in a series of short stories that we're going to be covering, which we mentioned in the previous video, the one we covered talking about William Taylor. Yeah, there's going to be a series of short videos coming out in and around the areas where we live, and this is going to be the second one. And it's a tragic story of young Ernest, and we'll get more into it as we walk around the reservoir itself, and we'll also show you guys some features and some old ruins which we may think you may find interesting, and they're just coming up now. So directly below me, I got the GoPros picking up, are the remains, the ruins of, I think it was the Hartley, or the Hartleys, the Hartley house here on Calf Hey Reservoir. I mean, obviously long gone, long since vanished, but I mean, you can just make out one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 7 houses perhaps. But there is more ruins coming up in this direction. And I think there's a billboard or a placard or something which talks about the families that once lived here and once worked in these areas. Yeah, so this is one of the boards we were just talking about. Clearly says the Hartley house. Obviously there were handloom weavers back in the day before the mills took over. And this is obviously a floor plan, a ground plan if you will, of the site, yeah, in and about 1850. But yeah, it's interesting stuff when you come over these parts. Hartley House, artist impression, and pictures of remains. And just in front, there you go, there are some more of the remains of the Hartley House. And what a view they would have had back in the day. Well, I say that, I'm not entirely sure when the reservoir itself was built, because we have got stories of one of the reservoirs being built in the late 1800s, but I can never remember which reservoir it was, because this is just one of 3. You've got this one, I think that's the Ogden Reservoir, and then you've got, I think it's Holden Vale Reservoir it's called, just further back. So you've got 1, 2, 3. So yeah, whether or not this reservoir was here when the Hartleys was, I'm not entirely sure, so don't quote me on anything which I may say as facts, because it may not be. But yeah, these are the ruins of the Hartley house. Right, we're going to walk around the pathway around, and as we do so, we'll get into the story of young Ernest Rodwell. So apologies for any possible wind interference on this short video today. Every time we come to Calf Hey, it is always like this. It's just generally a windy area, so I do apologise in advance. But we're going to make our way around, and we'll get into the story of young Ernest in doing so. But like I said, it's not a particularly long story because it's just another one that we've come across, we've stumbled across while researching other stories. And the newspaper reports at the time don't seem to have gone into this story in too much detail, or if any detail whatsoever. But like I said in a previous video, we're not going to discriminate now. We're going to cover even the shortest stories we come across, because we want, like I said before, the voices of the victims, the voices of the people in the stories to be heard once again. You know, it don't matter how small or how insignificant that may be. But we just feel like I say, rather than doing just longer stories all the time, we will cover these short ones, and I hope you all understand why. So today's tale takes us back to the 23rd of May 1930, and it was a Friday. Now, young Ernest, who lived and worked at a place called Kenyon Poultry Clough Farm, he made his way from where he lived and worked over to what's called the Holden Arms pub. Now, it's a first trek because Kenyon Clough, it's literally on the way towards a place called Holcombe, and I'll put a map over so you guys can see roughly what I mean by distance wise. But nevertheless, Ernest used to make his way over to these parts, and he used to meet a friend called Jerry Lord, who was only 14 years old, so he was 3 years younger, was Jerry. But on the Friday he met Jerry, like I said, at the Holden Arms pub. Now, we don't know, like I said, because what happened wasn't reported in the local papers, so we can't really say what happened during the meeting. All we know is Jerry had organised to meet Ernest back at Holden Arms 3/4 of an hour later, so roughly what, probably around about 5 o'clock I think it was in the afternoon. But when Jerry got there, he waited and waited, and Ernest never arrived, so we can only presume Jerry made his way back home thinking Ernest obviously wasn't going to appear. But all we know is Jerry and Ernest, like I said, they met up early during the day, because Ernest used to allow Jerry to stand on the sides of the bike, if you will, when they were playing together, when they were knocking about together. But that was the last known sighting of Ernest. Jerry, like I said, they got to Holden Arms pub and Ernest just never arrived. Now, like I said at the beginning, there's very little in the newspaper articles about this story, but all I can do is jump forwards by what, 2-3 days, and we're going to go to Monday the 26th of May, when a chap called John James Kay, who was a reservoir inspector, he arrived at Calf Hey Reservoir, and after doing whatever he was doing, he came across the spectacles and a cap that Ernest was wearing, but there was no sign of Ernest. Importantly, there was also no sign of the bicycle that he was on, obviously on the Friday. Now, why the bicycle plays an important role in this, or interesting role in this case, is from all accounts Ernest loved the bicycle. It was one of his pride, joy possessions, if you will. So it's very unlikely that he just dumped it and left it there. So one could ask, well, if his spectacles are on the embankment of the reservoir along with his cap, what the hell happened to his bicycle? And that is something that we're going to come to again as we make our way around these parts, and I'll show you guys some of the scenes and some of the views. So it's very hard to understand what happened between Friday and the Monday. We know the reservoir inspector, John James Kay, arrived, and it was around 4 o'clock PM on Monday the 26th when he came across the spectacles and cap, and they were lying somewhere on an embankment. Now we don't know which side. It could well have been here, it could have been on that side where the Hartley houses were, it's hard to pinpoint exactly where they were found, but nevertheless, Ernest's cap and his spectacles were found on an embankment somewhere on Calf Hey Reservoir. Now it's strange because PC Jones, one of the constables on the case, he came down on the Tuesday, and it was about 20 past 4 in the afternoon on the Tuesday when they actually came across the body of Ernest, and he was found somewhere in the reservoir, obviously drowned. Now when they dredged the reservoir and they found his body, they found that he had a rock attached around his neck with a piece of rope. Now this rock, it was said, weighed roughly 28 pounds, which I believe is what, between 10 and 14 bags of sugar. So it was a hefty rock. And again, things go quiet. His spectacles, his cap were found. They've now found the body of young Ernest, but his bicycle was missing. And it's the bicycle which, this is the bit I struggle with. Ernest, from all accounts, it was his pride and joy, his main possession. He loved being on his bike, and this is why he used to meet his friend Jerry Lord at places like the Holden Arms pub. They used to spend a lot of time together. So it was very strange for Ernest to leave his bike unattended, you know, and obviously if he hadn't been found in the reservoir and he just did a runner or he'd gone somewhere else, why would he leave his bike? But the point is, his bike wasn't here when his body was taken from the reservoir, which very, very strange. Now one could argue somebody, a passerby, has walked past thinking obviously the bike's been left, the spectacles have been left and the cap's been left, and they've just took the bicycle. Quite plausible. But on the other hand, if it was me, I'd be thinking, well, why somebody, a young boy's possession, has been left so close to the embankment of a reservoir with no sign or sound of him? I think I personally probably would have gone to the authorities at that point myself to report what I've just discovered. So it's very strange. It really is a strange tale. Now the inquest itself took place on the Wednesday, I think it was the 28th of May, and it took place in Helmshore. It was a very quick inquest, simply because the police had quickly found out obviously who the boy was. They'd been to inform the parents, but more importantly they found a piece of rope at Kenyon Clough Farm which matched the same rope that was on the rock that was tied around Ernest's neck. So straight away they put it down to accidentally drowned, but it was still left an open verdict. Now I don't know about you guys, but a young boy who apparently never had any issues, never had any troubles with people, he just liked to have fun, he was 17, why would he want to take his own life? There was no reason to take his own life. From all accounts, like I said, he hadn't upset anybody, he didn't have any dark secrets, there was no reason to take his own life. Now the only thing that came out at the inquest was that he told somebody, now we don't know who again because it wasn't actually reported as such, but it was said at the inquest that he found his 7-day-a-week job slightly monotonous. But is that enough to take one's own life? I don't know. It's a strange case, and it seems to be one that was pretty quickly sorted, if you will. Like I said, the jury very quick at basically coming up with a verdict of accidentally drowned. I just don't buy into it. There's just too much not answered for my liking. Now I'm not saying the police didn't do the job thoroughly, but it seems really strange how there was nothing followed up in the newspaper reports. A strange death in this reservoir, a young boy drowned. It just seemed a really, really strange case, and I don't believe for 1 minute it's open and shut. My personal thoughts are there's something more sinister that has gone on here, and Ernest has met somebody, or probably he may well have arranged to meet somebody. Something's obviously gone on, and I personally think he was murdered. Why would he have the rope with him? One can only guess. But it just seems there's so many issues with this case, and why it was to me it's not an open and shut case. I would love to know your thoughts on this one, because like I said, there's very little out there in the public domain about it. Yeah, it seems really, really strange. It really does. Now this case, it does take a strange twist or a turn of events, and a young man, 23-year-old labourer of no fixed address, he was arrested on the 5th of June for being in possession of a bicycle, and this bicycle by all accounts matched the exact same bicycle that was once owned by Ernest Rodwell. However, unlike the rest of this story, there's no follow-up to it. We don't know how Frank became associated with the bicycle, how he came in contact with it. Was he here? Did he actually find the bicycle on the embankment and just didn't tell the authorities at the time? Was he sold it by somebody else? We just don't know. But there's a lot of questions, there's a lot of mystery surrounding Frank Whitworth and, like I said, how he came into possession of Ernest's bike. But more intriguingly, he was arrested in Bakewell. Now, I've looked on Google Maps and I can't find any references to any areas around here back in the 1930s that was known as Bakewell, and the only one I can find is the one just over the Peak District, and it's probably, I don't know, is it nearly an hour's drive away perhaps? 45 minutes to an hour's drive away. So what was a young man doing in Bakewell with a bike he obviously didn't own, and it was the bike of a person who apparently had committed suicide here at Calf Hey Reservoir? There's just too many questions, and like I said, I'd just love to know your thoughts on it. How did he come into possession of such a bike? So for those who may obviously not know this area, there's 3 reservoirs, as I said further up. You've got Calf Hey Reservoir, which is this one. I think this one is called the Ogden Reservoir, and the one further back, like I said, is the Holden Reservoir. So there's 3 altogether. But yeah, you could argue and say that obviously a lot of sinister things have occurred in these parts, and we're going to get into those stories hopefully in the coming weeks and share them with you guys. Because like I said, Helmshore and Haslingden, it has had its dark times as well as its good times, don't get me wrong, but it's had plenty of dark times. And we've touched upon a few videos and shared them with you on YouTube as well as our website, but yeah, we're going to do a lot more. Hopefully you guys find them interesting as much as what me and Vicky do when we're recording them and when we're researching them. So many thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. It's another short tale from our past here in Haslingden stroke Helmshore. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe. Tell me your thoughts on this one. Do you think there was more at play, maybe foul play? Was poor Ernest murdered and his murderer got away? The bicycle, what was it doing over in Bakewell, so many miles away? Too many questions that haven't been answered, but I think I'm going to look into it a bit more if I can. I'm going to spend some time researching this. I'm going to try and contact the Lancashire, I don't know, the county offices or the police and see if they've got any old files on it, because it really is a strange tale. But like I said, if you did enjoy it, don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, look after yourselves, and as I always say, I will be back soon with another tale from our glorious past. So now we know Calf Hey Dam was built in 1856, and one of the original pieces, if you will, one of the parts. So yeah, interesting.